So on this week's Lovefly podcast, we welcome David. Hi, David. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening. No problems. Happy to be here.
Thank you. And David, as you'll find out, is a listener to the podcast, and he's going here to share his story, where he is in terms of overcoming his own fear of flying. And I think these are great stories to listen to, because there's always something in there that somebody will find useful. And you don't know what that thing is. There'll be a little nugget you're going to say, David, and you'll be like, it'll be a little throwaway comment, but somebody will latch onto that, and that could be the difference between them staying on a flight or getting off. No pressure.
That's an interesting point, and I'll come to that later. I've got it in my notes.
All right.
Finding those nuggets.
Well, so just get started then. Let's just sort of relax into it. Tell me a little bit about yourself, like, how you can find us, who you are, all that sort of stuff.
Okay. I live in the Midlands, Coventry to be specific. So if I did like flying, it'd be fantastic, because I'm only up the road from Birmingham Airport.
Yeah.
So that would be lovely. I used to fly a lot, and I was privileged to go on a lot of holidays when I was younger, to some unusual destinations and to all the usual European destinations. In my early 20s, all of that changed, and it presented quite a problem for me. Now I'm at a point where I'm in my mid-30s, and I've decided to take action. I've got a child now. I want to expose her to going to different places. Obviously, it's a drain on my partner, people around me, and that's kind of where I've started this journey. Over the last kind of 15 years, I've dragged myself onto a few flights with a lot of medication and a lot of distraction and a lot of anxiety that comes with it, and all the unpleasant physical symptoms.
Yeah.
If I was to say I had a fear of flying, I feel like fear would be too soft a word. It's been sheer terror for me.
Yeah. Okay. So you did have a period, the sound of it, where you were flying quite comfortably, I imagine, or you were flying anyway?
Yeah, as a child, I absolutely loved flying. I was a big fan of it. Love the power of takeoff. I love the view that you get, and I love that access to be able to go anywhere. You can't do that any other way. And in
We're a bit of buffering here.
I like going to air shows. Oh, are we back?
We're back. Yeah, you said interestingly, and then it all went.
Yeah. Okay. So interestingly, in my adult years, I've always been a big aviation fan. I like going to air shows. I do aircraft photography. I go to the airport as well. I take my daughter to the airport. And oddly enough, I can sit at the end of the runway at Birmingham and not be worried that one plane's going to land on me. So it's a very unique fear in that when I'm on a plane or when somebody I love or know is on a plane.
Yeah.
So that's quite an interesting thing for me. Over the years, I've tried a few different things like hypnotherapy and...
We'll come to that, David. So because I don't want you to give away your secret sauce quite yet. So what happened then, if you're okay to talk about it? Like, what stopped you liking flying?
So I link it to an event in my early...
Lost you again there.
Oh, sorry, I got out again. Yeah.
I think it's my Wi-Fi. Give us the set. So
okay, cool.
Again, so I'll ask the question. So what happened? You like flying? What happened?
So around my early 20s, I was flying home from Dubai with my brother, and we were somewhere over the north of Iraq, and there was quite a bit of turbulence. Obviously, turbulence is a very subjective thing. It felt bad to me at the time, but I wasn't scared. I was uncomfortable, but I wasn't scared. I didn't think much of it. We had the pilot came over and made an announcement that we were going to have to change path. That he wanted everyone to sit down, pack everything away. And he warned us that it would be quite an abrupt change as well, but it was necessary. And although that worried me at the time, now with hindsight, I look back at that and go, that pilot that was in control. He did absolutely the right thing, and he communicated it very well.
Yes.
And kind of once we were out the storm and the turbulence, everything was fine, and I made it back absolutely safe, as I have done every single time I've been on a plane. It was around 2 years later when I turned up at the airport to go on another holiday, that I suddenly fell ill in departures, and I had no idea what was wrong with me. I didn't know if it was food poisoning or I had no idea. I was just pale. I was sweating. I was being sick. And I felt really unwell. And I thought, blimey, I'm not going to be able to get on my flight. And it was kind of while I was cleaning myself up in the loos and freshening up, ready to come back out, that it suddenly occurred to me I couldn't get on the plane. So it was like this previous event, even though it didn't agitate me too much at the time, it's kind of hung there in the back of my mind subconsciously, and then come back with a vengeance next time I've gone to fly.
So this was there was a 2-year gap, David. Is that what you said?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Anything else happened in that time, and stress at work or anything like that you think might have been linked to it?
No, nothing I can think of. So I've always just assumed that it was that one event made me more uncomfortable than I realised at the time, and maybe that kind of fight or flight mechanism got rewired in the process.
Yes. Crikey. All right. So that sounds rough. So you didn't get on the flight, I'm assuming, that day, or you?
I did get on. I did get on in the end. Only just slided well. Yeah, it is. It is. And I found the return flight just as unpleasant. And then after that kind of spiraled out of control then, because it was about finding excuses not to book another holiday, not to book another flight, thinking, my God, I'm not going through that again. I don't want to do it again. So yeah, it's really kind of downhill from there. And before you know it, there's, like I said, a good, 10 to 15 years gone where I have got on the occasional flight, some for work and some for holiday. But in general, I've avoided it. I've had a lot of convenient excuses. COVID was one. That was a great excuse not to go anywhere.
Thanks. Yeah. Thank you, Lord. Yeah.
And having a young child as well, I've always gone, well, young child doesn't want to be in the sun. A lovely British caravan park with loads of activities, loads of stuff to do. That's much better. So I've kind of stacked up the excuses. I've justified it in my head, and I've done the things that I'm sure we all do when we don't want to do something, and you give yourself just cause and reason.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me a little bit, but just to people get a sense of it, then so this 10, 15 years where you're kind of making excuses, there's some are provided for you, some you find for yourself. Tell me a bit more about the impact upon you in terms of your work, your family, that sort of stuff.
So I rejected opportunities with work. I've missed out on holidays with family, and the tension that creates, because when I miss out, it means other people miss out as well. It's experiences missed, it's time together missed, and it also creates tension. And, even when I do get on a flight, well, hopefully not anymore, and from my last flight, but I'll get to that. But, even when I was getting on a flight in that time, I was a liability for whoever was around me.
Right. In what way?
So the whole experience would be, I couldn't book a flight in advance. It would have to be very last minute, because as soon as that flight, the anxiety for me is crippling, so I would lose a lot of weight before traveling. I wouldn't get any sleep. I wouldn't be able to work properly or function properly. And then on the day of the flight, it was all about distraction. And even with a good dose of medication, it's still incredibly difficult for me. Very high heart rate for the whole flight.
Yeah.
I'd put a sleep mask on. I'd curl up in a ball for the whole thing, and quite dysfunctional behaviour. There's certain songs that I find relaxing. I love music.
Yeah.
I think I had the one flight to Mallorca that I always look back on as interesting, where I had the same song on repeat for the whole flight, because I was just hanging on to it. And if you're going to do a flight in 2 to 3 minute sections, it's going to feel really long. It's going to feel really uncomfortable.
So how many times do you reckon you listen to that? I have to know what that track of music is now. How many times do you think you listened to it on that flight?
So it was Little Wing by Jimi Hendrix,
right,
which is a very, very nice, relaxing song and very chilled out.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's around 3 minutes long. It's not the longest song over a 2-hour flight. So
that's a lot.
Enough times.
Oh my goodness! I bet you know every single note of it by now. Then I imagine.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. It
And
haunts me now when I look back.
yeah, I bet it does. So that was what you were like, and then so you lived with that for a while. So what was the turning point that made you think enough's enough?
So for me, it was my daughter wanting to be able to take her to even Disneyland Paris at first.
Mm.
You know, my philosophy's always been very much, if I can't get on a flight, I can't put anyone I love on a flight either. So, you know, it's opening up that experience for her. And I also kind of had this realization that I wasn't doing enough.
Right,
So it felt like I would book something, I would avoid it, avoid it, avoid it. I would book something and then I would start working on it.
right.
And it just wasn't enough time. And I think, like I said a minute ago, I love my music. I play guitar. I like learning languages. And with both of them, you have to embed your learning, right? It's,
Yes.
and it kind of clicked with that, thinking if you're going to go on holiday and you flick through a phrase book before you go, you might be able to order your dinner. You might be able to say please and thank you, but you're certainly not going to be able to hold a conversation.
No.
And it's much the same thing. I kind of got to this point where I thought the fear is in the subconscious part of my mind, and the
Mm.
fear is intuitive. I also need to make the positive side intuitive. I need to find a way to really immerse myself in this and actually, you know, not avoid it. I need to confront it.
Yeah.
I need to immerse myself in it, and I need to commit. And, you know, and that's the point that I made the commitment to myself at the start of last year. I'm doing something every single day.
Yeah. So there was an interesting moment. So you linked it to your daughter, and you didn't feel you were doing enough. But was there a particular day where you thought, right, this is it, or was it more of a gradual creep up on you type thing?
It was the gradual creep up. I've
Mm.
been thinking about it a bit, and then it was the convenient turnover of the year that gave me a chance to go, this is a good time to start something new.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Usually it's the post-Christmas diet. This time it was the fear of flying. I went for a bigger challenge. So
All right. Cool. Okay. So talk us through from the start then, what sort of things you've been doing, and why us? I know we've been part of your process. I'm always curious when people invest so much time in the stuff that we punt out. And it's always because you don't know, we have you put things out in good faith, hoping that they'll be helpful to people, but you don't always know. So it's curious, So I'm not looking for you to praise us really, just sort of like what made you, what what gave us the honor of being part of your process, I guess.
I definitely will praise you, because it's been a
I'll cut it
huge
out. I'm
part
going
of
to
that
cut it
journey.
out for you. That's it. Yeah.
So, and this is coming back to the point you mentioned earlier about those nuggets of information. And one of the notes I've got here in front of me is that the podcasts are a huge part of that for me because they're easy. One of the things I like to do when I'm changing something or committing to something is pick up on something that's easy for me to commit to. And one of those was putting podcasts on in my car.
So was this the first thing you started to do?
It was actually, yeah, is one of the first things I found. And interestingly, I had some podcasts already on my phone that I'd never listened to. So it was whilst flicking through my phone, I found them and I listened to a couple and I went, wow, why didn't I listen to these before? So that's the first thing you did. And it was very easy to access. So with the commute, it was quite easy. And I also bought a copy of the book Saw, which I think is quite popular as well in the community. So they were the two things I started with. I thought I'm either going to read a chapter or listen to a podcast.
Right.
And I thought I'm going to keep the bubble quite small at first. I don't want to bring too much outside interference in. I'm a little bit cautious of things like YouTube because the algorithms can come back and sting us and start sending us all sorts of things we don't want to see.
Yes.
So I stayed away from it there, and I didn't want kind of to go into that world. So I thought I'll stick with the podcasts and the book for now. The podcasts, coming back to the other point, it is something I really want to emphasize with people. It's that some of those podcasts I've picked up loads of great points. Some of them I've only picked up one, but I've listened to over 200 podcasts now. And even if I've only got one piece of key information from each of those podcasts, that's over 200 positive, reaffirming pieces of information that are now buried in my mind. that without me even thinking about it, my mind can draw confidence from those. And that's huge. And it's such low effort to just listen to a podcast, just once a day, especially if you've got, a decent commute to work as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was huge for me. I broke down my approach to the podcasts because at first I couldn't confront certain things. I couldn't listen to other people talking, for example. It was a bit too triggering for me. So at first I only really listened to the episodes that directly confronted fear. So the turbulence ones,
Right.
Your book as well. I thought that was fantastic to listen through. I was slightly uncomfortable going through that, but I gradually made my way through it. And what I found is it kind of grew from there, because after I'd done all that, I thought, what have the pilots got to say? So I started going through all the pilot ones, and then, and the amount of confidence you get from the pilots is it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And especially the selection of pilots that you have on as well. They're all very engaging and very interesting. One of the key things about the podcast as well is it doesn't always focus on the fear, which is great because you're almost feeling part of the community. You're hearing about people. It keeps it interesting. It keeps it engaging. And it just subconsciously, it builds up that information store as well. After that, I started listening to some more of the experts and some of the people with slightly more unusual roles that scared me a little bit at first.
Like air traffic or that sort of, the aircraft investigation, that sort of those people.
Yeah, pushing the limits a bit more. Storm chasers and all sorts of people that I deem to be absolutely crazy.
Me too.
And then the final link in the chain for me was listening to other people. And that's the one I thought I'd never listen to. Yeah, but I actually found it incredibly useful. And I listen to some things that I think people do and go, oh, that's what I don't want to do. And I listen to some and go, that's exactly what I want to do. Yeah. So it's really interesting to be able to kind of place yourself and go, oh, maybe I could try that. Maybe I could improve. Maybe there's things that I could do as well. So yeah, the podcasts were a huge part. Whilst reading Saw, I had a bit of a revelation and changed path. And that's when it started growing and I got into other things. So I was very excited reading the book, and I slowly made my way through it until it got to the point where you have to do visualization exercises. And it all fell apart for me because it's no surprise that somebody who's terrified of flying has little control of their imagination. So all of a sudden, a tool that requires me to use my imagination to try and fix something, it just didn't work for me. I'm too cynical and straight-laced, and I just don't have that control over my imagination. And that was the kind of point where I thought, actually, you know what, I've got to hit this head on. There's not going to be a magic trick here. I need to look at exposure. I need to look at what I can physically do, and what techniques I've got. So after that, I started working on breathing techniques. Like I said, I'm quite skeptical. So the good thing about breathing control is it is scientifically linked to your heart rate, and that is scientifically linked to all the symptoms you experience when you are anxious. So that's really easy for my black and white brain to take in. If I can control my breathing, I can control my symptoms. And you don't need to do anything fancy. You just need to slow it down. If you're like me, pick a really high number to count to, because I count really, really quick when I'm scared and anxious. So yeah, breathing techniques, things like that started coming in that I hadn't thought about so much anymore.
And was this all from the podcast, or were you going somewhere else by now?
Yeah, it was from the podcast. Yeah. So I went through the breathing exercises on there. There were a lot of other people who'd recommended it as well. And at first I was a bit like, oh, I don't want to do that. I'd feel silly doing it. And then I thought, actually, I'm sat there as a grown man with tears in my eyes, curled up in a ball. I think probably already look silly enough. So why not try it? See if I can, control myself a bit more. So that's come in useful in so many ways. I think as part of that as well, I started building up my exposure. So doing things like going and sitting at the airport more. So, if you only live a 10 to 15 minute drive away, why not just go and have a little wander around the airport, or go and sit at the end of the runway, and 30 planes later, you think, wow, these things are just coming in and out all day. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great exposure work, isn't it? And also, assuming you went to Birmingham, it's a nice airport, that even though it's international, it does feel very friendly as well. Does it? It's not too imposing compared to, say, Heathrow, for example.
Yeah, it's relatively small. It can get busy, but you can always kind of escape that space quite easy.
Yeah.
And it's definitely something I'd recommend to people is having a walk around the airport. Get familiar with where departures are, where different kind of entryways are that you'd need to look out for, where you'd get your luggage trolley from, where the taxi's dropping you off, because that's a load more things that you don't have to think about on the day.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's like I think if you're going for an interview and you just turn up, you're in kind of sensory overload. Like trying to work out where things are, and whereas if you've done a little recce beforehand, like you've done, then that's one you've kind of got that ticked off, really, haven't you? Kind of go, right, I know where I'm going. That's one less thing that I have to process. I think it makes a lot of sense.
It definitely does. Flight radar as well. I found fantastic for that. A, seeing the frequency of flights, but B, getting an understanding for the airport that I like to travel out of, what direction they go. For example, when the planes take off towards Birmingham, most of the time anything going south has to do a U-turn. So you're going to have a big turn straight away. There you go. You know what to expect. Great.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. As they say, familiarity and all the rest of it. So they've got a podcast as well. I don't know if you've listened to that.
No, not at all. Actually, I'll have to have a look. Yeah.
We're normally level pegging with them. So the last time I looked at the charts, they're normally number one and we're number two, and occasionally it switches in terms of the genre that we're in, which is the aviation one, the self-help part. Yes,
Okay.
the podcast is very good. Yeah.
That's
And obviously
fantastic.
they've been on our podcast. They've been on our podcast as well. They were great.
Well, I'm still keen to keep learning, even though I've had a bit of success now. I'm keen to keep it going because I find any empty space in my mind is space where my mind can go wild.
Right.
So the more and more I learn, the more and more I embed it, the easier it is for me. So that's what I want to kind of keep going.
So let's have a bit of a sort of like a status check then. So from the moment you started, how long ago? What was the date or the day that you would say you started in earnest doing the podcast and doing stuff?
It would have been very early January 24.
Right. Okay. So we're a year on.
Yes. Yeah. And at the end of last year, I managed to go on a trial flight with EasyJet.
Right. Whoa. Take a second.
Yeah. Okay.
So at the beginning, were you just listening and kind of going, see how it goes, or did you set yourself a goal? What was your mental process?
It was just every day, just one goal every day, and keep it simple.
Did you have I'm going to do this for this amount of months, or was there some sort of get out or got end point that you had in your head?
It was you're getting on a flight this year.
Right.
You can do it in the summer. If you need a summer holiday to give you a bit of motivation, that's fine. But you are getting on one this year.
So that was positive. And had you set a destination or duration of flight, or was it just any flight?
No, I left it completely open for myself.
Okay.
The aim was not to put too much pressure on myself at first. I thought the more I load it up, the more it will be tricky to commit to.
Yeah, exactly. So this is really interesting. So we're a year on now. Obviously, you've done a flight before Christmas. We'll come to that in a sec.
Okay.
You've set yourself a sort of a daily goal, but you've also got an overarching goal as well, which is I will get on a flight this year somewhere.
Yes,
exactly.
That. Yeah.
So you've given yourself permission to be a bit flexible about how you do it, but you've got a clear sort of end point. This is great. It's a good
Yeah, and then there's a longer term goal of I will be confident. I don't have to like it. That's the other thing I'm telling myself as well. You don't have to like this.
Yes.
But what I will do is I will be confident. I will feel safe and secure doing it, and I will enjoy the world, and I will enjoy holidays, and I will bring that to the people around me as well.
Yes. Okay. Nice. So talk us through then what happened, how you ended up flying before Christmas. What was the thought of the process, thinking, or whatever you did to get to that?
So in the summer, I didn't quite feel ready for a holiday. So I started looking at short flights coming out of Birmingham to Edinburgh, Glasgow, Paris, and anywhere that was kind of around an hour, thinking I want to get one booked before the end of the year. And then that was when I came across the EasyJet Fear of Flying course. And they had a set of flights coming up before Christmas. At this point, because I'd invested so much over the months, I did go through their material, but I didn't feel I kind of got anything new from that. This was more about the exposure and getting a flight. And conveniently one where I could take off and land at the same place. Because exposure therapy with flying can be very expensive. And, you know, whilst you can get cheap flights to Glasgow or Edinburgh, I've then got to pay for a hotel for the night. Then I'll end up having a meal. And, you know, all of a sudden, a couple of 60, 70 pound flights turns into a 600, 700 pound weekend. Whereas I knew with this trial flight, I could contain it. And just do it nice and simple, tick the box, and then continue my exposure therapy the next year by going places that are a bit more enjoyable than taking off and landing again at Birmingham.
Yeah. And how was the flight?
So it was fantastic. I had no anticipatory anxiety. Bearing in mind, I booked this a couple of months before I flew. So usually I'd be kind of booked 2 weeks in advance maximum. I had no anxiety. I was waiting for it to come. I thought it was going to hit me one day soon. I'll stop eating. I'll start being sick again. I'll stop sleeping. And it just didn't come. I slept for 9 hours the night before my flight.
What?
And I woke up feeling so much more in control than I ever have done before.
Wow.
And I ate my breakfast as normal. And I went to the airport and the anxiety still didn't come. And it just wasn't happening. I couldn't believe it. And I'd also, I'd paid a bit extra to have seat booking because normally I'm somebody that will only book certain seat numbers.
Yeah.
Because obviously I have superpowers that mean if I look at the wing or the engine, they're going to fall off. Because that's what my mind tells me.
That's quite a gift. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought one thing you're going to do with this flight is you're doing it with no superstition and no ritualistic behavior, which I was very bad for before. So you're not picking your seat number. You're going to sit by the window and you're going to look out of it. I didn't take my St. Christopher, which I've had and travelled with since I was a child. I didn't update my will before leaving. I didn't say any special goodbyes to anyone. I just treated it exactly like a normal day. I wandered off to the airport and up and away I went.
And did you tell anyone you were going, or did you sort of sneak off and do it by stealth?
I told my partner, but nobody else. But even that was quite late notice. And that was purely down to the logistics of making sure a child was looked after for the day.
Yes.
So yeah, it went fantastically well.
So you went and did that on your own. You didn't feel like you needed to take someone with you. You felt brave enough to just go and do it.
Yeah, exactly. And that was part of what my realization was earlier in the year, that you've got to get rid of all that other stuff. Even the distractions. I didn't take headphones with me. I didn't take an eye mask with me. And to bring back a kind of musical reference again, the brain loves resolution. And in music, you do it all the time. You deliberately build suspense, and then you bring someone back round with a resolving note, and it makes them feel settled. Yeah. And what I was kind of thinking, looking at distractions, is they build all this tension. So say I hated turbulence or any bumps or movement in the air. And if I distract myself, what happens is that tension builds and builds and builds while I'm avoiding it in the background. And when it does hit, it hits me 10 times as hard. It's like an elastic band snapping back.
Yes.
So actually, by being present in the moment and by acknowledging it, you know, I actually felt so much more comfortable. So I thought, take all of these distractions out. I'm all for taking crosswords, films, and noise cancelling headphones on a flight, but I like to say now, if I take them on, I'm taking them as comforts, not distractions. They're comfort features. So that's the way I've been kind of balancing it in my mind.
So, I mean, what I find amazing, I know some other people have done this, but it never ceases to amaze me that you've done this as a self-learner. You know, all of this you've done yourself. You just by So I get a sense that you have to be quite a disciplined person to be able to do that.
I'm normally not. So hopefully that gives confidence to people. It's, it was just incremental by listening to the podcast every day and doing something every day. It grew into being part of me over the last year. One thing I did find was it was a little bit overwhelming with the amount of tools. There's so many books, methods out there, different things to do. And the one thing I did do was kind of stop in the middle of the year and go, I'm going to make myself a toolkit, because there's all these resources around me and I can't work out what I'm going to use and what I'm going to do when. Yes. The other thing is, when I'm in a state of panic, I'm not quite in the right space to do a lot of these things. So I kind of came up with an incremental approach for myself. And the equivalent would be, imagine if you look for cooking and somebody comes along with an oven, pots, pans, a load of ingredients and just throws them at you. What do you do with it all? What am I cooking? Yes. Where do I start? It's all a bit overwhelming. And even though you've got everything you need around you to make a great meal, yes, it's probably not going to happen. You're probably just going to have a bit of overload and get upset. So I kind of went with, the first one was that link of slowing yourself down and kind of having breathing exercise. Well, the first one's before that. It's that deep set learning before you even get on there. So your mind can't run away. So I told myself I was going to control my breathing first. And then once my breathing and my heart rate had come down a bit, that's when I'd go into kind of recalibrating my brain. Right. So pick a times table that is outside of something I normally do. So that would be 17 times table, 18 times table, something where I have to think to do it. And I'd just go through to the end. And if I wasn't quite settled or I started panicking again, then back to breathing. Right. And then really importantly after that was to kind of acknowledge what had happened. There was a few bumps there. I didn't like that, but I'm perfectly safe. I'm still here. They're done now. There might be some more. But look, that was a bit of good evidence there. I dealt with that. I did well. Give yourself a pat on the back. It's really important. Again, this whole tension and resolution thing, right? If you ignore it, fight it, the next one's going to hit you harder again. So acknowledge it, put it to bed, settle it and close it. Give yourself some closure and some resolution, because your brain loves it. And then get into recalibrating yourself. That's when you go back into your comforts. Go, what can I do? What can I enjoy? So I think breaking it down and taking a logical approach, simplifying the tools, and just picking kind of one tool that I'd read for each level to go, how do I bring myself out of that panic and hyperventilating? How do I bring myself down? Now, how do I change the path of my mind? How do I recalibrate a bit, and how do I resolve it to make myself feel like that episode's complete and that I've dealt with it? Yeah. So I definitely advise people to kind of simplify it a little bit. Think of the tools you've got, but actually make a plan to use them. I mean, it's the one thing I took with me was just a list, 1 to 4, just in case my mind escaped that far that I couldn't remember what to do, just to put out and go.
Recap the list again so that people got it. That was good.
So the first one, controlling my breathing to bring down my heart rate.
Yeah.
Then once I felt that was low enough and stable enough, to try and then reprogram the thoughts. So don't try and control your breathing at the same time as trying to change your thoughts. It's not going to work. It's too much. So then work on your thoughts. For me, I like doing a times table, but I'm not familiar with. So I have to calculate every single one, whether it's 16, 17, 18 times table, something like that. Then give yourself a pat on the back and acknowledge what's happened. Talk to yourself about it. Give your brain that resolution and that confidence and comfort. And then go into your kind of recalibration, allowing yourself to enjoy something and settle back down again.
Nice.
And it's worked fantastically well for me. So, yeah.
So when you, last year, when you were thinking, I'm going to go and do a flight and stuff, how did you know you were ready? You said you weren't in the summer. So what happened?
Yes. So I think it was that realization around distractions and superstition. And I was still in the early part of the year. I was still very much hinged on the idea of, I need to find my fancy pillow and I need to find my eye mask and I need to make sure I've got my headphones on. What am I going to listen to? Am I going to take the podcast with me? Because now I like them. Or am I going to listen to the same Jimi Hendrix song on repeat for the whole flight again? Because apparently that kept me in the air.
Yeah. Good old Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah, exactly. So, I still wasn't in the best headspace with it. And I think that made it a little bit trickier. I had some reservations at first, thinking, oh, do I want to book a flight in the winter? Kind of as if they'd take off when it's not safe anyway. So, but it just felt like the right time. I felt that confident in everything I was listening to. I'd progressed through the podcast. So I was listening to other people now. And I was thinking, you know what, these people are achieving things, and I don't think they've put in as much effort as I have. Maybe I'm ready. It gave me a little confidence vote. There were some people that definitely put in more effort, and they were kind of inspiring me to carry on as well. The other thing was I'd acknowledged some other anxieties in my life, things like being busy at work, personal stresses. Gone, you know what, fear of flying is a very convenient boogeyman for all your other stresses, because it's something you can push back. You can kind of load all your stress onto your fear of flying and go, oh, that's horrible.
Yeah.
But I'm in control of that because I don't have to book a flight.
Do you know what, David? I just have to pause for a moment and acknowledge the use of the word boogeyman. I want to, it is not used enough in my book, and you've brought it back into the vocabulary there. So thank you for that. Fear of flying is the boogeyman for bogeyman. I don't know which it is actually, but yeah, it's not good. It's not well.
Yeah, whichever way you want to call it, that's kind of the role it has played in my life. So it actually opened up the pathway for me thinking, I'm conquering this, but what else is dragging me down? What are the other pain factors that I'm coupling up with this that are making it feel so much worse than it is?
Yeah.
So that made a big difference as well. And, it boosted my self-confidence a lot to kind of get into booking the flight. So that was good. I also, something that I hadn't done before was, I work with automotive safety design as one of the things that I work with. I'm not an expert in it. But drawing some parallels was quite interesting. So we work to international standards, and they are child standards of the same standards that aviation works to for electrotechnical components, that sort of thing. So kind of, I did a bit more research on the aerospace standards, knowing that, okay, now I'm a bit more comfortable reading about things, digging a little bit deeper. And I saw a lot of parallels to, some of the stuff that I work with. So, it really gave me confidence there, because seeing what we do in the automotive world, yet we have, a much easier path to delivering a product than the aerospace sector. So I'm like, if we're doing this much, wow, that must be really good. So I guess, something there is we have whole teams of people that think up every single type of failure, and that's between suppliers, between the companies, and the level of depth we go into is just insane. We have to assign everything a safety integrity level, which I believe is the same across the international standards. And we do full risk assessments based on those. And we do full scoring based on the exposure. So your chance of that use case occurring, for example, the severity of something failing, and how controllable it is. So, for example, if your power steering fails in your car, you have a mechanical linkage behind it. So your severity and your controllability scores will be quite favourable.
Yeah.
And depending on how we score each of those risks, that tells you kind of whether you need to look at eliminating the fault, whether you want to find a way of living with it, or whether you want to fail safe. So this starts dictating your redundancies and all your different kind of capture methods.
Yes.
And also the technical depth that they have to go into. So I think getting to see that in person is just fantastic. Even things like if we put in an additional sensor as a safety method, in some cases it can't even have the same power supply as something else. So everything's, you start looking at all this layering. Obviously in automotive, it's much easier for us to fail safe because you're pulling over at the side of the road.
Yes. Yeah.
I think the other interesting part of that as well is looking at the validation of it. We have to provide evidence that we've met all of that. We have to audit and sign off to say the right people have looked at it. You know, these work products go through hundreds of people by the time it's all decided on and agreed. And we have to validate it at every level. We have to test and prove every sensor is good. We have to test and prove every mechanism does the right thing, every system, every subsystem, and every complete vehicle. So we test it at every single level. And the really important thing to remember here is, I think was it Alon's friend, the test pilot.
Yes.
He was talking about you have 3 layers of redundancies for many things. The redundancies only come in after you've run out of quality controls. You don't fail and go straight to a redundancy, because they're the things that are scored and acceptable in functional safety.
Right.
Before that, you have quality controls that aren't good enough to be safety controls, but they can still capture things. So that's like software captures, where, for example, if a sensor fails, you might come up with a mapped value because you've got another sensor next to it and you know what their relationship usually is. Or, you know, there might be other features that capture that failure and allow the system to keep working. So generally, when we test safety features, it's nearly impossible sometimes to get them to break to the point of the redundancy even kicking in. The amount of stuff we have to turn off and the amount of software we have to break just to go, stop saving yourself, you know? And
I find this fascinating, you know, because, you know, I'm like one of my sort of day job, if you like, I work as a facilitator, and psychologist, and I've got clients that are in the automotive. I wasn't aware of all this stuff that you do, you know, because
you know,
you think about how
work.
Well, you think about it, you know, everyone goes on about, you know, flying being the safest form of transport and all the rest of it. And you think, and cars are often used as an example of saying, you know, if you compare the car journeys to that, but you think about all the safety that's in place and what you're talking about. I find that staggering.
Yeah, and it's the sheer layering of it. The amount of protections that are in there just from good quality engineering perspective before you even get to those mandated redundancies that you have to have.
Yeah.
It's absolutely mind-blowing. And, you know, at the minute I'm working on, you know, new products or incremental products, and we put years across whole teams of us into making sure that's right.
Yes.
Then you think the product cycle of a plane is in tens of years. So, you know, the levels that it's going through, the independent audits, the competency audits, it's massive. You know, we even look at the timing of faults. So how long do you have from something going wrong to it causing a hazard? And we have to look at, do you detect it in time? Do you react to it in time? And we have to measure and prove all of that. So, you know, I think drawing that parallel, I'm lucky enough to have that kind of window into that world and also work with people that are ex-aerospace as well.
Yes.
But it's something I hadn't linked before. And I think drawing that across really, really helped me. Because I thought I always knew there were redundancies, but I didn't realize how hard it was to even get to the redundancies, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I hadn't thought about it like that. That's massively reassuring, isn't it? You know, just think about, well, how little, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know much about what you do. I'm learning a little bit now, but I've seen the pilots talk through, and I've heard engineers talk through about redundancies, capacity that aircraft have. But the way you've just described it for cars, you just think that's a car that maybe costs 50 or 70 grand or whatever, what you might be talking about. You know, you talk about an aircraft that costs millions and millions and millions of pounds. It's just, it's the scale of it, isn't it? That's even more reassuring, I think.
Exactly. It's mind-blowing. It's absolutely mind-blowing, the amount of work and experience that goes into that. And we have to compare all of that work to previous products and other products. So it's, you know, it's just checked on so many layers. And it is really reassuring. And like you said, the money that's invested in aerospace is in another world. You know, in automotive, we have to look and go, well, is it dangerous if the customer has to pull over? Or is it just an annoyance and a quality complaint? So, you know, you might find in automotive that we rely more on fail-safes than redundancies. And we tend to pick redundancies based on making sure the customer has a good experience. So can we find a way that we can tolerate the fault so that they can drive home, even if it's in restricted performance? Because we don't want them stuck on the side of the road. We want them to at least be able to get home and get to work again the next day, even if it is a bit lumpy and not quite right. So, So yeah, it's interesting. It's a slightly different dynamic, but all the work we do is from a child standard of exactly the same standard that aerospace and rail all work from. It's all stemmed from the same stuff, and all of that learning shared then as well. There's common technology across companies. There's other companies that are supplying parts to you as well. They have to do all of the same work. You have to audit their work. They check that their parts are compliant with yours. So, the layering to it is just mind blowing.
That is. Ah, there you go. I've learned something. Thank you for that.
Definitely. I could do a whole podcast on that. So I've tried to keep it in an understandable format without getting into complex terminology and talking the whole way through a standard, because that could be quite long-winded and boring for people.
So what other goals have you got there, David?
Keep building exposure. So I'm looking to book something soon.
So yeah, that was going to ask. A better question might be, where are you right now? Though, so you've got a sense of your year now. So the time of recording was sort of mid-January 25. I'm not sure when this one will go out, but just so people get a sense of where you are. So as of right now, do you still consider yourself a nervous flyer, or how do you talk about yourself now?
I still classify myself as early in the journey. I've had one good experience that was so much better than I thought it was going to be. Yes. What my marker of good was before I did that was nowhere near what I actually achieved. So I feel like I've proven the method. I feel like I've got the confidence. I'm not concerned at all about booking my next trip. Okay. I'm concerned about finding the right time in my calendar to do it. Thinking, what's the right weekend where I can get away with disappearing?
Okay. And where will you go?
So I want to go up to Edinburgh. I think that'll be a nice, easy one. So I'm going to aim for that. Probably with my other half. In the next couple of weeks. Yeah. I'd like to book Disneyland Paris for Easter, and then pick somewhere sunny for the summer.
Nice.
So that's my goal. I've got 3 things to book.
And so when you say that now, how likely it is that you're going to do all those 3 things? So, on a scale of 0 to 10, where are you? 10 being absolutely.
It's finding the right time. So a 10. There's zero anxiety associated with the booking, only excitement. And I've never experienced that before. I think actually booking the experience flight was the first flight I've booked for myself since my early 20s. Yeah. So, I've not even managed to look before. Yeah. It's just been a, let me know a week before we're going. Yeah. And just, I'll sacrifice a week of sleep and eating. So, and to be honest, at the start of this journey, this time last year, I would have told you I'm unfixable. I know there's people that are worse than me, but I would have described it as a sheer terror. Yeah. And I would have said, I just can't see a path out of it. It felt like I was really at a dead end. I wasn't optimistic when I started. Yeah. But once the wheels started turning and I got some momentum, it just changed, just carried me through the whole year.
So how soon from when you started would you say you experienced kind of hope, where you thought, actually, there's something shifting in me?
It was when I started listening to the pilots.
Right.
And it was when I was eager to get into the car in the morning, thinking I want to listen to something. So, what's happening? It's I'm kind of getting into this, and I'm getting more curious. I want to listen to more. And I think that eagerness to listen to and learn more and actually build up a bit of an interest around it rather than just the fear side.
Yes.
I think that spurred me on a little bit. And that's where I praise the podcast with taking just a very personal approach. A lot of it's about the people, the community. It's not just a self-help thing. It's a really engaging and interesting kind of forum. They're like little mini biographies, some of them as well. It's, some of the people and the characters are absolutely amazing that we've had on.
Yeah, we've been very lucky. We've been very, very lucky. Yeah.
So I feel privileged to listen to all of these mini stories as well. And now it's like, wow, I feel like I'm meeting loads of new people. It's great.
Well, and now you are one of these mini stories.
Yes, hopefully an interesting one.
That's it. You're joining a huge legacy of heroes.
Well, I feel like I've made enough progress that hopefully somebody else listening that goes, I'm unfixable,
Yeah.
even if they can make that one step to go, you know what, I'm going to listen to the podcast like he did.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll get my 200 nuggets of information, and maybe that'll start my wheels turning to that. That's all I ask from this. If a handful of people go away and go, you know what, I'm going to commit to doing something every day, or I'm going to listen to more of the podcasts, even if they just start that little wheel moving there, that'd be amazing.
So were you able to stick to doing something every day, or did you give yourself some days off from January?
I believe I have done every single day, because at the start I was forcing myself, and after that it became a hobby. I became eager to do it.
Right. And you compared it to sort of the time that it takes to learn the language, or to learn with your guitar or music. That sort of like repetition to embed it.
I would definitely emphasize that. Yeah. Driving a car, learning to walk, all of these things that you do where you don't really think about them.
Yes.
It's so important to embed that learning and actually commit. It's that C word for me. You've got to commit.
Yeah.
Because if you do a little bit before, it's just not quite going to be good enough. So
a couple of things then. Will you let us know what you're planning to do next? Like drop us, I don't know if you're in the Facebook group or anything like that. It'd be great to hear how you get on.
Definitely will be. Yeah, I'm in the Facebook group. I like reassuring other people.
I'll be able to spot once I've met somebody. I see their names come up all the time, and there's certain people come up time and time again. You sort of start to recognize sort of themes, don't you?
Yeah, and I always tell myself, if you're going to comment, I try and stay away from anything generic and go, what practical advice can I give? What have I learned? What's realistic? I don't like giving advice about things that I haven't trialed or proven myself.
Yes.
So I look at the resources I've had or things that have helped me and just, try and hand that over.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. So as a consumer of the podcasts, you poor sod, what would you like to hear more of? Is there anything missing? Yeah, I'm just curious.
To be honest, there's such a diverse mix of people on the podcast that make it unique and make it the resource that it is. It's really, really tricky to say what I personally would like more of. There's, I think, John Cox, episode 186, the air crash investigator, fantastic. I liked his, brutally realistic approach to it as well. The fact that he didn't go, oh, everything's fantastic. He went to the certain parts of the world that I wouldn't fly in.
Yes.
But North America, Europe, here, listed off a load of places. Don't even think twice about it because I know the bodies cover it. And, so some of those characters with big experience, just, more of them we can get on, the better. The pilots, like I said, the test pilot, apologies, I can't remember his name. He was fantastic. And then, like I said, people with inspiring stories themselves. And again, I think I took a note of that for some of the pilots, people like John Ty. And I went on to get his book afterwards as well. There's another Concorde pilot, I can't remember his name. I bought his book as well and read that. Rosie Scott, hers were fantastic as well.
She was great.
And some of the Q&As, actually. Some of the Q&As are really good. There was a chap called Michael that asked some slightly different questions as well.
Michael Taloni.
Yeah, that's it. He didn't go down the easy route with the questions. And I quite like that because I thought it's quite good for people that have been into this for a while. They've kind of nailed the basics. And he asked some questions that I wasn't thinking of. And although it brought something new to me, it also kind of ticked it at the same time. That meant in the event of flying in future, if that question ever did come up, I've got the answer locked in. Great.
Yeah, he did that. He did good. Melissa did that as well, didn't she?
Yeah, I have Melissa written down here as well. Yeah. So some of the Q&As were good.
Do a bit of a check. I know you've listened to all of them, but if you had to say, right, someone happens upon your podcast as the first one they ever listen to, and then they say, right, what would you say you would recommend if you could recommend 5 to 10? Which ones would they be? And I'm putting you on the spot a bit.
So,
not on the spot at all. You're prepared.
Yeah, very, very prepared. I like taking notes. I would first of all say take an incremental approach like I did. Give yourself the soft route in case you hear anything you don't want to hear. It's it's a gentle path in. And if you're committing to learning long before a flight, you should have plenty of time to work your way through them before you do fly. So I would absolutely start with the audiobook. That's been like my Bible. I kind of go back to that. If I feel I'm having a wobbly moment or feeling a little less secure, then go back to the audiobook, reset, remember where you started, remember how far you've come. So I would absolutely start with the audiobook. And then I would dive into some of the basics. So like episodes 21 and episode 5 on turbulence.
Yeah.
I think they were good. Turbulence is a big trigger for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Stages of flight.
46.
I think that's incredibly useful.
Yeah.
For myself, I'm a bit of an aviation enthusiast and I like simulators and stuff. So I was already kind of clued up on noise abatement, that sort of stuff. However, I didn't realize that that's what gave me that sensation in my tummy. So, that sort of stuff, fantastic. So I would go through all of the kind of the different aspects of flying and the fears part first, just to answer some of those burning questions. And then as you get more comfortable, I would definitely get into listening to the pilots, because there's always something incredibly soothing about a captain's voice, isn't there, or a pilot's voice there. I don't know whether it's something they get trained in, but there's always something so relaxed and confident and, this air around them. And, when you hear them talk with that confidence about these topics, it really reflects onto you. So I would definitely go on to the pilots first. I've got, I think, episode 122 and 33 here. I don't know what they relate to because they might be Q&A. I've got Captain Steve written here as well. Nick Eads as well. I think he was 160.
Oh, the 747 longest flying 747 pilot. Whatever.
Yes, yeah, his was fantastic. Just to go, wow, he's been doing it all that time, and such a long career. I like John Ty's one because he was like a normal guy that it's just kind of happened to as well, and had this fantastic career. So I like those because you can immerse yourself in the story that they've got, and really start getting yourself into it. And then, like I said, I'd start getting into the slightly deeper ones, like the test pilots. John Cox's one I've got down as 186. Yeah. I found that one very useful because it has a completely different perspective and angle from some of the other people. It was a harder listen. I wouldn't listen to that first, but in the latter stages, it was absolutely superb. I really enjoyed that one. I would love to hear more of his stories. And then, like I said,
he was quite up for coming back. Actually, same with the air traffic guy, Adam Spink. They both said at the end, you want me to come back again? No problems. You want to do a part 2? So we might circle back and do a few of those because they're
fantastic.
Yeah, I think they're good. They're great people, and I just like so pragmatic about it. We were trying to get an aircraft investigation person on for ages, and John Bond, works with me, managed to track down John, and John's well known in those circles. So I think it was great to get somebody on that. It's like he's pretty much a celebrity, And what about Noel Phillips? Did you like his episodes? Have you watched any of his YouTube things?
Yes, yeah, I did. I listened to him, and I thought, wow, this guy's bonkers. And then, I've only recently listened to that one. It was probably just before Christmas. But yeah, he's absolutely crackers. But what a career to have, and what a job to make out of it. And the fact where he's saying he goes out of his way to go on unusual planes as well.
Right, yeah. I don't care where it's going, what it is, I'm getting on it.
Yeah, exactly. That all of our usual things that we see with our main carriers are nothing. They're just boring. They're bread and butter to him. Yeah. He's out there looking for Antonovs and old Soviet kit and
things with cattle on and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I can't remember the chap's name who chases the hurricanes and goes into the storms on the east coast of America.
Paul Flaherty, is it?
Yeah. His was fantastic, especially when he talked about the planes that they go on. They're ex-commercial planes that have been decommissioned, and they're using these planes to go storm chasing. Yeah, exactly. So when you're flying on your brand new one, just think in 50 years' time, someone's going to be flying that into a storm and be absolutely fine.
I know, but yeah. That's really good. What else you got? This is great. You feel well prepared. It's brilliant.
Yeah, my notes are running short now. There's There's a couple of books I read. Like I said, the John Ty's one. I can't remember the other Concorde pilot. His was a bit tougher. That's one I'm listening to at the moment. He talks about his training, but again, that kind of realism's nice as well.
Yeah.
I think there was one called Fear of Flying Toolbox, and apologies, I can't remember the author to give him credit, but that one was really good in reaffirming that actually superstition and distraction weren't helping me, that I needed to break free of them.
Yeah.
That book takes a very practical approach of actually you need to prove to yourself that you can do it. And it was nice reading that because I'd already had that realization, and that just kind of secured it up for me. So, I'd definitely recommend that. And of course, there's lots of great people on Instagram too. There's one I like, Airplane Facts with Max. He's very light-hearted.
Max.
Yeah, he's an aircraft mechanic. Looks like a bit of a free spirit. And he picks up on reels, pictures, and memes that have been posted online about, there was a crack in my window. And he'll go up to a window and go, no, look, this is just the outer layer. He'll take it off. That's just a bit of flimsy trim. It means nothing. You've still got this here. Just dead black and white. They're very, very short clips. Yeah. And then he goes off and either makes a joke or goes off on talking about something random that, but it's so light-hearted.
Yes.
That again, it's a nice, simple one to have. The only thing I'd say with those sorts of things again is be careful of the algorithms and the fact that your phone will start or your laptop will start pulling in all sorts of rubbish.
Yeah.
Flyman Simon. Great, just seeing where these people go around the world. I enjoyed following him. Captain Chris as well. Yeah. Again, you build up that kind of old-fashioned element of glamour by following them as well. You go, wow, look at the pictures they're taking, look at the places they're going, look at, and it builds that magic around air travel that's probably never been present in my life. In my life, it's always been shove you on like cattle and get you going. And I think, as you've said before on a number of podcasts, it's an incredibly unusual experience. It's so counterintuitive, and just seeing a bit of that glamour again goes, oh, I'm really lucky to be doing this. I'm really lucky to have this opportunity. Yeah. And I spent that whole test flight I went on looking out the window and just going, wow, why do I never sit by the window? This is spectacular.
Yeah, it is humbling, mind-blowing, and all those sort of things, isn't it? That we can do that safely, and it's just hard to comprehend. No matter how many, like I've said this before, no matter how many times the pilots talk through the physics, I'm still like, but how? Really? How does it do that? Really? But yeah, it's very clever.
Interestingly, I had one little moment early on, which was a bit of a change moment for me as well. I was always scared in turbulence that I was just going to drop. And I remember thinking about a rock, and you throw a rock and it's not aerodynamically shaped. It's just a heavy lump that you've propelled with your arm. And at no point after throwing a rock does it just go straight down. It just doesn't happen, does it? It's a heavy lump you've thrown through the air, and it takes a set trajectory where it goes through the air and then it gradually tapers down.
Yes.
Now you take an airplane that's in the volume of hundreds of tons, traveling at hundreds of miles per hour, that is aerodynamically designed. Yeah. It's not going to go straight down, is it? It's not going to drop. It can't. No. Like listening to some of the pilots talking about air pockets. And it is a revelation for me going, wow, it's a load of rubbish. Yeah, it's going to be bumpy, but there's nothing in the world that's going to stop that big thing moving forwards.
Okay.
So it's actually, getting some of the cogs turning, putting the pieces of the puzzle together. Feel a bit silly looking back at some of it.
No, well, don't, because you know what you know, don't you? I mean, I've still got lots of my family don't fly. Obviously, all mine do, but they're not allowed to be scared of flying. That's just not permitted. And let's joke. But I've got lots of relatives who've, my mum never flew. My dad flies has flown a few times. Mum never flew. I've got a brother doesn't fly now. A sister doesn't fly now.
Ah, wow.
You know what I mean? So you just think it's very easy to sort of be surrounded by don't do something, and actually I just see that it's a way to experience life, and it's just a means of getting to amazing things, to create fantastic memories. And I think it's a shame when people are not able to seize that. And I think what you've just described there, you said, I had some silly fears and stuff. Well, I hear some stuff sometimes from my relatives, and I just have to bite my lip because they won't listen to me anyway. Because I'm related to them, And they say, "Oh, I won't get on it because I just know I'll be the one that's, It's like, oh, yeah, of course, yes. There's nothing I can tell you because they won't believe me. And so I really admire people like you that have just gone from what felt like probably impossible to you to a place now where you're doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the commitment part for me. Really, I know I've said it probably 10 times already, but embedding that learning.
Yeah.
You need to spend enough time on it that it becomes part of your subconscious process.
Yes.
Because otherwise it'll just be, all those affirmations, they'll just be a group of words that don't mean much to you. Yeah. And you will just go, but it's going to be me. It's until you really truly drill that into your head that is how it works, then it will, that was really the unlocking point for me.
Yeah. Love it. David, absolutely fabulous. There's any more gold? This is your moment to impart. But I just think that's been really, really great. And I love that. I really like that rock thing as well. I hadn't thought about it like that.
Yeah, it's a bit of a simple example, but it clicked. It worked in my head. So,
That's it. It's such a simple idea, but you're absolutely right. It doesn't just drop, does it? It has a trajectory, and then it does that thing and doesn't pocket and drop. It just keeps going.
And then think of something that, weighs the same as a few buses flying through the air at a few 100 miles per hour. Nothing's stopping that. There is nothing on this earth that would stop that and make it go. So it's going to keep going. But I think that is all the advice I have for now that has got me from absolutely terrified to a good experience. And hopefully, I said I'm at the start of the journey, but hopefully that's a huge part of the work done to take me forwards.
Yeah. I mean, there's no way you're at the start. You're way past the start, but you've made some significant progress. And yes, there's some more work to do just to confirm, embed, and make sure that you might have a little blip in your head occasionally and you just think, oh, what about this? But you're so well on the way. I think there's, it's going to be unstoppable for you now.
Hopefully I'll be the rock. So hopefully I'll be unstoppable. It was the getting on there with no medication, no distractions, no superstition, no picking my seat, no help, absolutely nothing, just me. I did it. And having that pride to say that, actually, you know what, I did it. I didn't need any of that other stuff. That's what made it fantastic. And I guess for me, I would just plead, if there's one thing someone takes away from this, it's to go away and do one little thing every day to help yourselves.
Totally agree. Couldn't put it better myself. David, fantastic, mate. That was really good. Some absolute brilliant nuggets of wisdom in there that's going to help people. And cannot thank you enough for your time and being so well prepared as well. You made it very easy for me. Just chatted away, and there's loads of great stuff there that people will be able to latch onto. So thank you.
Hopefully so. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And make sure you let us know how you get on with your next flights and stuff. We want to see updates. Please tag me on the Facebook group because it's easy to miss stuff. We're about 7,500 members at the time.
Oh wow!
So it's very easy to miss things now. So, and I don't want to. So please tag me when you do put something up there about what you're doing and stuff because it'd just be great to highlight it. So thank you.
This will be the year of exposure therapy, so I'll have plenty to post hopefully.
Brilliant. And you'll be skint as well.
Yeah, I'm going to have no money, no financial freedom this year.
Lots of memories.
But I'll be very confident and happy. Yeah.
Exactly. That's all that matters. Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Cheers.